I know it's a little bit late in the afternoon, so we will try to involve you as much as possible. So the intention is that if you have any questions, reflections, please ask during the session. And we have reserved quite a bit of time at the end so we can discuss and reflect on what you've heard. And what we are trying to talk about today would be flow thinking, some of the mental leaps that we have done during moving from a more of a resource-efficient way of looking at things towards a more flow-efficient way of working. So the 3 leaps we are going to talk about today is going from methods and tools towards principles and mindset. The second one would be resource efficiency towards flow efficiency. And the last one is scattered experience towards a continuous improvement culture. So who are we here? I'm an embedded coach at Ericsson right now. I have the title of Flow Sensei, but I call myself the plumber. I'm a lean and agile coach and trying to help the organization to get the things out of the way so we can get an even flow in the system.
Hello Hamburg, hello Curio House. I'm Erik Schön, and believe it or not, 19 years ago I was a student here in Curio House. I had a lecture, several lectures in theoretical computer science, so now I'm back and it's great. So ever since 1994, that beautiful summer that I spent in Hamburg doing some studies and some other cool stuff, Hamburg has a big part of my heart. So, ich bin ein Hamburger. Apart from that, I'm also a proud member of the Flow fans. And who are the Flow fans, you may ask? Well, that's a leadership team that tries to be fans of flow. I mean, creating flow. We're fans of our teams, and we're fans of flow. Hence, we want to get the flow flowing. And if you Google flow fan, Google image search, sorry. Whoops, what's happened there? Whoop, we're back. So if you Google picture search on a flow fan, you will find something like that. So we're going to get flow. So I'm also trying to create conditions together with my peers in Ericsson where people, teams, and organizations can grow and develop. So Ericsson 3G, that's who I'm representing here today. A lot of the mobile traffic in all the networks all through the world are running in Ericsson equipment. So if you happen to have O2 subscriptions or Mannesmann subscriptions, Vodafone subscriptions, then you're lucky because you have great quality and great performance because that's powered by Ericsson. So 40% of the traffic, 40% of the traffic in our networks, we're number 1 in 3G and also in 4G. So we basically make the mobile internet tick. In our development unit where we develop 3G, we are 1,800 people, around 100 teams, and these are really cross-functional, cross-component, co-located teams. And we're all around the world in 10 sites, primarily in Northern Europe and in China. So our mission is quite simply to lead the mobile broadband industry towards a mobile, networked lifestyle for everyone. That's what we're about.
So what are you building, Erik?
Yeah, we're building something called the 3G network, and this looks rather simple, and some of my colleagues back home think I shouldn't show this picture because it looks too simple. Well, we have all these devices. I think you have a few of them, the pads, the pods, the smartphones, and the Blackberries and whatever. And they communicate with the internet and the phone networks when you talk, which some people do still. But what makes this work is these amazing products that we build. We have something called a radio network controller, which is a huge router combined with a switch, combined with a massively multiple core hardware, and there's a lot of cool software making it all work. It's like a lot of algorithms, several millions of code, well, it just makes all those connections and all these flows of Twitters and Instagrams and stuff go where they should. There's also something called a radio base station. That's where you take all the Maxwell equations, transform them into use of massively parallel and distributed digital signal processing into digital and, well, making it all flow. So that's the 3G network, that's our product. Complex network, complex product, but fun. So, the first mental leap, from methods and tools to principles and mindset. We started our journey almost 3 years ago, Q1 2011, and we were sort of doing Scrum. We were doing Kanban. I mean, there are some Kanban experts in the room, and I think they would say proto-Kanban, some kind of very shallow version of Kanban. We have also learned from colleagues in Ericsson in Finland that there were 3 things to think about when starting a lean agile transformation journey. It was continuous integration, and continuous integration. And for us, that meant test automation. Great tool, great thing to have in your toolbox. So that were the methods and tools, but somewhere along the way, helped by these 3 things in the middle, that helped us to take this mental leap. So we had an initial focus on sort of the needs and the direction, what we wanted to achieve, where we wanted to go. That was very important, and there we didn't talk about methods or anything, and I'll come back to that later. We had a lot of inspiration from people internally in our company who had started the journey before us. We also looked out to the wider communities, like this Lean Kanban community. We looked at Mary Poppendick and Don Raiders and many others. And combining this with our culture of always trying to think for ourselves, which we had done sort of for methods, which we had Ericssonized, sort of combining all these things led us to the right-hand side here with sort of flow towards value, from customer needs to customer-fulfilled needs. We have this visualization, which we can do in pretty much every context. Visualization and transparency is so important to make everyone aware what's going on and what's happening with the flow. Then, finally, continuous learning is also something that we sort of learn along the way and in taking this leap, which is very, very important in order to continue and never stop and never degrade. So, just give you an example, this point to destination. What we had from the very beginning is this sort of true north or goal number 1, which is really 4. But this helped us to focus and to keep us on track on our journey. So it's 4 things. First one is to increase the efficiency to enable more output. And here you don't see a number, but if you promise not to tell anyone, I can tell you we had a factor 4. That was sort of as bold as we could be, or dare to be. That is, of course, important because we were the star of the company, but we were now becoming the cash cow of the company. And if you go from being a star of the company to being a cash cow of the company, that means you will be flat on budget or slightly degrading. But we wanted to deliver value to our customers. So if we get a lower budget or flat, then we need to improve. We need to be more efficient if we're going to deliver the same value or more value. So this is very important for us. Lead time. Reduce the lead time by a factor 2. 50% shorter lead time to be more responsive. Our customers were a bit complaining. They had lots of ideas, lots of needs, and it took us several years to fulfill them. So we were very bold again, tried to put a stretch target on ourselves. Let's cut it by half. Quality. I mean, that's one of the foundations together with empowering people. But this is also very important. Imagine these complex networks when there is a software bug and one of those radio network controller crashes. That could be in a city or a part of a country where there's no Twitter, no Instagram, no phone calls, no emergency calls. That's terrible. It's no revenue in for the operators, and it loses the trust of all the subscribers of the operators. Not to mention that the operators lose the trust in us who deliver that crappy software and hardware and that system. So of course quality is important. Here we were even more bold. We said, let's improve it by a factor 10. 10% of all the software bugs we had before, we were aiming for sort of a factor 10 lower reported bugs from our customers. Empower people. I mean, this is really the most important thing, I would say, because motivation and empowerment in order to take decision where the decisions need to be taken and to be motivated and to do all these things that we talked about before. So here we have some internal employee surveys and we put a target on that as well, which was pretty stretchy.
So Another example of this shifting towards principle and mindset was that instead of doing big changes and big things, we started to think in terms of small batches. And we did this in a couple of ways, ramping up from trying something out in one team towards all the teams, but also as we do improvements and we try things out. So we are thinking about improvements as experiments, small time-limited experiments where we go through the cycle of forming some kind of hypothesis of what they think, then trying to predict what will happen if we implement this, then actually running the experiment, and then observing what really happens. And the delta between the prediction and the observation would be the learning and focus on learning and then adjust our thinking into the next loop. And these experiments are either kind of more of an ad hoc basis or we do it in a very structured way in the different parts of the organization. Then moving on to the second main leap, going from resource efficiency towards flow efficiency. Starting out, this organization was kind of more of a siloed, functional organization. There was quite a bit of focus on keeping people busy. What should we start next? How can we see to that every team has something to do? And inspired by external thought leaders like Niklas Modig, he's a professor at the Stockholm School of Economics, and he's written this excellent book, This is Lean, and he talks about looking at lean as an operational strategy, where instead of being in the upper quadrant of very high resource efficiency, moving towards high flow efficiency, and then as we are at the high flow efficiency, we can then move up towards higher resource efficiency again. And this is really of prioritizing flow over resource efficiency, and also putting an emphasis on continuous learning so we can actually start to strive up towards this nirvana of how the processes should work. To be able to do this and to understand how things were, we needed to visualize. There was quite a bit of visualization before I started as a coach at Ericsson 3G, but there were a few things that were actually visualizing the end-to-end flow. So one of the things that were in place when I stepped into the organization, you had kind of these snapshots where you actually visualized the different main stages of product development, but also the queues in the system. And then some indication of how much work was in progress, and also how much was in the queues, which is a good indication because the queues are leading indicators of how the system performs. But we didn't really see trends over time. This was just a snapshot, and you see the difference from the week before. So when I came into this engagement, we started to apply the cumulative flow diagrams to see how we can actually look at the process over time. And we've been doing that for quite some time in different parts of the organization and different parts of the system. And we've also been running different types of experiments, and one experiment that has been running since this spring until here in the autumn has been to look at how we can actually start to limit the amount of work that is in the process. We are not applying strict WIP limit at this point, but we are looking at an overall view of how we can limit the amount of work in progress. So in spring, the kind of average lead time was something like this, and we had, moving over to the autumn, we have made a reduction of lead time of something like 17%. And this is done by actually changing the amount of work that was in the process. And we could easily see the change by just doing things like this. But adding this visualization has been a great tool for the organization to see kind of the cause and effects of the decision they make. In addition to these graphs, we have also experimented around things, how to visualize this in a more physical way. There were quite a bit of Kanban boards or task boards around the organization, but nothing that really visualized the end-to-end flow. So one experiment that we started before the summer was to actually try to visualize this in one place, just for the organization in Stockholm, in one building, to start out and see how it works. So a small experiment that we'll try locally. We're not addressing the kind of the multi-site situation yet. And what this became was what we now call the visualization room, which is a room with, in this case, 3 whiteboards with all the features that are ongoing in the different parts of the system. And by moving things into this room and making all this information visible, we could also start having different talks and thinking about work in a different way by actually moving some of the meetings of how we prioritize work and how we discuss what to do next and so forth into this visualization room. And we are seeing gradual change in the mindset of the people in the organization to think about more of a stop starting and start finishing to get a more even flow through the system.
Yes. So, flow efficiency in product and in our process. We have been talking about this flow efficiency and resource efficiency using analogies from other contexts. So we have this flow and queues in traffic that everyone can relate to. We have been talking about flow efficiency and resource efficiency in the Swedish healthcare system, or in the healthcare systems in general, how different strategies lead to different waiting times and lead times and response times. And that has been all very good. However, some people at a certain point in time start to question this. Is this really relevant in our context? I mean, we have these huge 100 teams and big product. Are these examples really relevant for us? The mental leap here was, some of us took some training with a guy called Don Reinertsen, who wrote the book Principles of Product Development Flow. And he started by saying to us, well, Eriksson, what are you doing here? Why are you taking this class? Yeah, but you know this stuff already. You use it in your products every day. You have all the algorithms for flow control and congestion control and emission control in your product. So you don't need to be here. And that was sort of an epiphany moment for us. So then we could start to think, how do we do these things in our product? What do we do? You remember this radio network controller and the radio base station? Well, we have some arrivals, connections, Instagrams or tweets or whatever, and we have departures. And some of those are more important than others. For example, 911 calls, emergency calls. We have some kind of quality of service, and we have some algorithms, admission control algorithms, congestion control algorithms, to get the most out of the system, to get the highest capacity, most flow of packets, basically, through our product. And this is exactly what we want to do in our process as well, right? But there's not packets, it's features or projects or trouble tickets or whatever you have. So this has been an amazingly powerful way for us to sort of turn discussions when we are talking about how to improve our process. Well, how would we do this in our product? We do this every day in our product. We control the arrival and departure rate to ensure high capacity in our product. Well, what kind of algorithms should we use in our process, in our ways of working? So that kind of mental model or image is really, really good to have now in our discussions internally, how to continue to improve the flow in our ways of working. So, final mental leap, scattered experiences through continuous innovation. I mean, our company culture has a lot of good things. We have something called respect, respect for people. We have something called professionalism. which is also quite sort of craftsmanship and things. I mean, that's pretty good. We have something called perseverance, and we heard a lot of talk about resiliency in Christoph's talk earlier. So these are all very good, but we don't have this sort of Kaizen, continuous improvement mindset. We're sort of troubleshooters. We go in and fix troubles, and we fix them quick, and we're heroes in doing that. Sometimes we learn, sometimes we don't. But for our customers, the operator of this world, they feel we don't have any corporate memory sometimes, which is a bit sad. So the mental leap here is about getting into this continuous improvement, continuous innovation, continuous learning mindset. And one of the stories that we have tried to build is to overcome a situation where we have felt that continuous improvement and Kaizen, that's our Japanese customers beating us on the head, asking us to do root cause analysis and action points and sort of pushing us. So that doesn't feel so good, being pushed. But of course, these Japanese customers, they are sort of trained in some kind of Kaizen culture. So they just do this because they care about us. They want us to improve. But we didn't get it. We just felt bad. So how to sort of change, how to take this mental leap towards continuous innovation, continuous learning, and continuous improvements? Well, we found this story. And I shouldn't say this in Germany, but the #1 sports car company in the world is actually Ferrari. And maybe some of you have been to the Ferrari Museum close to Maranello, you know, the racetrack, the manufacturing plant, and the R&D facilities of Ferrari in northern Italy. And you go there and you can see a fantastic movie where they celebrate all the great victories, all the great drivers, all the trophies, all the cars, all the engineers, all the workers in the plants. And you can feel how proud this company is about what they do. And that's why they're #1. But at the final frame of this movie, celebrating all these things, is a quote from the founder and former CEO, Enzo Ferrari. The best Ferrari car we've ever produced is the next one. And I think this is fantastic. This is another epiphany. I mean, when you realize that continuous improvements is about that. The next sprint is the best one. The next feature is the best one. The next user story is the best one. The next release is the best one. That's what you're going to aim for. Sort of a positive mental image rather than this sort of negative thing. And I think this is just fantastic. So this is one way of sort of storytelling, which we started 1.5 years ago to sort of help everyone within our part of Ericsson to sort of take this mental leap. And just a few weeks ago, we sort of added another way of doing this. This is sort of an expectation that we have on everyone, on all managers, on all engineers, on all teams, everyone in an organization should plan for innovation. We want to have time for innovation. We want to have sort of capability planned at 70% of the maximum, which gives us sort of 30% time to be innovative. And innovation, that's a big word, but for us and for me, it just means value from ideas. Value from ideas. In your product, improving your product, or in your process, you do experiments, you learn, that's value. You do experiments and your performance of your product improves, that's value. Or you do some experiments in your ways of working and you go faster, that's value. So innovation, value from ideas. But the key thing is here to create the time and space to make it happen. And of course, real lean senseis or Toyota guys would say that, well, you don't need this. People should do this all the time, every day. But for us, in order to help us to take a few more steps on our journey, we really needed to create this time and space for everyone and create a clear expectation and combine that with the storytelling of the Ferrari about the beauty of improving.
And there's also another benefit that by actually reducing the utilization to 70%, we also make the flow in the process even more even and flow better.
Exactly, and of course here you have all kinds of learning involved in innovation because learning is also value.
Yeah. So we've been on this journey for 3 years now, and we kind of had a vision that we talked about before, the 4 things. We talked about being more efficient, having shorter lead times, higher quality, and more motivated people. That's kind of the vision or the challenge that has been set for the organization. We have a current condition where we are right now, and very recently we have set up a new kind of challenge or a target condition of saying that the software that we deliver at the end of the sprint should go out to a live network every time. So we have a goal of trying to going to a more of a continuous deployment strategy. And this, you could say, is kind of the, if you listen to Arne and Fritjof that talk about Jimdo, kind of the goal number one, so to say, at this moment. And the next step is to run small experiments in the organization and see how we can change how we work so we can actually try to achieve this on a continual basis.
And the important thing here is to get everyone involved. Everyone should feel that he or she and in their team can contribute to take us towards this vision. And sort of we get the pull from the customer, from a real customer. So we have a live network somewhere in the US. I can't tell you where, it's a secret. But there is a real customer that wants to do this together with us. They want to pull our stuff every third week, every sprint. They want us to deliver the content and take it out in live operation. So this is really fulfilling a customer need. And we want everyone to be involved and direct sort of the creativity and the innovative power of a company in that direction towards that need.
And this is kind of the 3 mental leaps, part of these mental leaps that we were talking about. And it's really about moving from methods and tools and having something that is very prescriptive in that sense towards more of principle and mindset to help the organization to form their own methods and tools. We also have moving from resource efficiency towards flow efficiency first. And then eventually we can maybe start to try to raise the resource efficiency again. And going from scattered, isolated improvements and learnings in the organization towards a more continuous innovation mindset in the organization. And these are, of course, just some of the leaps that has been done or has been started in the organization. And in this case, in terms of flow thinking. And there are many different leaps that are taking place more or less as we speak in this organization. And with that, we would like to open up for questions and reflections.
Okay, first a round of applause for these guys. All right, so let's open up for questions. All right, let's come over here. Start with this guy.
Thank you at first. You talked about the visualization room. How many boards are in this room and how many boards are alive to those who are maybe not alive? Don't like to say dead, but...
How many do we have? Is it 4, 3 or 4? Oh, you have them there.
So in the actual visualization room, we have these 4 main boards that are very much alive. So we're running meetings in this room every week. So the features and the blockages and things like that on this board should be no more than a week old. Of course, this is an experiment, and this is kind of not the master data at this point. So some of the information for some of the parts of the organization might not be 100% up to date, but we get most of the information up to date at least on a weekly basis. And then we also have the cumulative flow diagrams. We also have some other additional information. We have the kind of pointing to the direction we're moving and things like that that are on the other sides of this room. Out in the organization, there's more or less every team has their own board, but they're not really connected. So if we have 100 teams, I would say there are at least 100 and 150 different boards out there that would represent different types of part of the organization.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is really interesting. I mean, I think Håkan answered the question to this big room, and we really use that to take the decision. And the same way as when a team starts using a board and start working in sort of using the Kanban method, they will start from the right and then try to finish stuff. And of course, you do that on a sort of end-to-end enterprise level. That also turns the discussion around from starting new things, which is our culture, to sort of finalizing things, which is very, very good. Also, speaking about the teams, many teams are now starting to have 2 boards. They started with 1 board, but they feel the power of visualization, so they started to have 2 boards.
Okay, thank you. Next question.
So just thinking about this mental leap, and it sounds like Ericsson's actually pretty far along in making that mental leap, but how do you deal with new people that are coming into the organization that have maybe not made the mental leap yet and are suddenly coming into this organization where people are in a whole different place and they're trying to figure out what's going on, and do you have any thoughts about that?
You mean people that we recruit from other companies or
New
from
hires.
other parts of our company?
Yeah, new hires, people that are coming
new
in.
Yeah, it's a good question. We had one guy started just the other week, and he seems to be very happy because he can see what's going on. He just walks around the corridors, he sees the boards, he can start to sort of see what's going on in that team, and he can see what's going on in that team. He can even see what's going on in our team, the flow fans, I mean this leadership team, what we're doing. It's fully transparent. So I would say it gives you an easier idea of what's going on. And it's easy to start a conversation based on what you see on those boards as a newcomer.
Okay, any more questions?
We had a question up here as well.
Coming up.
Could you talk a bit about how you encourage the teams to be experimenting? Are they coming up with experiments, or are you encouraging them to experiment with things?
So I think I know that you talked about experimentation when you started the journey 3 years ago, but we have really emphasized the language of experiments and not talking that much about improvement anymore. We're talking more about experiments, and also talking about in terms of we run experiments and we expect 50% of them not to give the result that we expect. So we kind of starting to give the mental model that they are allowed to try things that potentially are not giving an improvement, but is focused on learning. And it's really not that much push in terms of doing the actual improvements. We might challenge the teams. How would we, could you think about ways of how you can move from this position towards this position? And trying to find experiments to try in that way. And then we're also trying things like Toyota Kara, a very structured way of doing improvement work and running. It's a very structured process that helps you really focus on taking small steps, multiple steps a day even, and or just one step a day.
I can continue with some more reflections on that, because I think it's a very, very good and important question. This thing of getting the teams to feel that they can do experiments and try things out in order to improve the way they do the work is so important. And our culture, it has been that there's someone else who does that. There's been some operational excellence guys in that department, and there's been some other guys and girls over there that's been doing that stuff. So this is really a big change. So we've tried these challenges to sort of direct the energy in a certain direction, but as Håkan said, there's been very little push in our whole transformation journey. We have set up some general guidelines and some general directions, and we talked a lot about experiments. Ever since we started the journey, we talked about try this, maybe sometimes avoid that, based on colleagues in Finland, what they tried and failed, or not failed, but learned to not do again. So that kind of, what kind of language do you use? Do you talk about failure, or do you talk about an experiment that give an unexpected result that you can learn from? I mean, words are important.
Well, you sort of answered my question already, but my question was, you were talking about creating a culture of Kaizen and getting everyone involved in that and using Slack and stories to do that. But what other concrete methods have you used that? And if you have used Toyota Kata, which I also have a couple of years of experience with, what were your experiences in sort of starting out with that in your company?
Starting out with the Kata in particular, so we introduced kind of the idea, is it half a year ago? No, even more, 9 months ago?
Early spring.
Yeah, and talking about this, doing some training, and we sent off one little bit bigger team to do kind of a 2-day immerse training in Toyota Kata work with one of an expert from former Toyota guy. And then the head of this product development unit, he said, well, now we should do Toyota Kata for everything we do. But
Yeah,
we kind of...
he was in the class, right?
Yeah, he was in the class, and that's kind of the final comment in the training. Now we should do this in the whole organization. And we kind of, both me and the trainer from former Toyota guy, he said, whoa, wait a minute. You need to try this out, take it slowly. So we are now kind of, if it works in your context, then we might want to grow it. But we'll take it slowly in a few parts. So I think we now have maybe 5 different teams in the organization that are trying out Toyota Kata in a very structured way. And what I can say is the faster loops you make, the easier it is to get it to stick. So we particularly have a team working with the continuous integration environment, and they're trying to make that as stable as possible. And we had a cycle of doing 1 experiment a day, of making small changes to how do we do the installation script and how do we bring the environment up and stuff like that. And it didn't really take off. But when we moved into, okay, we make the change, and as soon as the change is done, we meet again and look at what the next thing we will do. So when we moved over to 2-3 iterations a day, it really took off. And we can see that the teams in this case are really starting to change how the environment is working. So I think it's a good way of getting structured and kind of improvements pointing towards your vision. But it takes an effort to get started. You need good coaching in the beginning to get started. But we also done quite a few value stream mapping exercises and kind of looking at how the value stream looks. And based on that, the teams started to kind of ask for doing different improvement experiments based on what they've seen when we have done these value stream mapping exercises.
Okay, I think there's time for one final question. It's really short. Okay, well then we thank you for coming here.
Thank you.
Thank you.